A very good evening to you all. Welcome to the Wives Roundtable show. Wives Roundtable is the show for the Nigerian woman. This is the show where we bring you information to help you and your family lead wholesome lives. At Wives Roundtable, we're very dedicated to ensuring that women everywhere get the kind of information that they need to use and live very full lives. We really want you to live to the fullest of your potential. That's all we do at Wives Roundtable, and that's why we're here every week to bring you the kinds of information that would help you do just that. My name is Amaka Chibuzo-Obi, and I'm your host on this program. Tonight on the show, we're going to be discussing a topic that I know will be very valuable to everyone, whether married or not, because in our different lives, we have relationships, and the people that we have these relationships with all come from different backgrounds and have different upbringings. So tonight on the show, we're going to be discussing upbringing and marital conflict. Yes, I know that you might be saying, oh, it doesn't concern me, I'm not married yet. But that's not true, because you may get married someday and you most likely would have a relationship in your life right now. So yes, this topic is for you, whether you're married or not. We're going to be looking at the relationship between upbringing and conflict in the home. Is there a relationship? Why is that relationship so crucial? And how can we help our partners live in such a way that their upbringing doesn't have an adverse effect on our relationships with them? Trust me, guys, this episode is one that would open your eyes and give you information that would really help you. So do not even dream of moving a muscle, because Wives Roundtable returns right after this quick break. But before we run off, I want you to use this time to check us out on social media. We are at Wives Roundtable on all social media platforms, Instagram as well as on Facebook. So join our community right there. My name is Amaka Chibuzo-Obi, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Wives Roundtable show, and this is the show, the only show for the Nigerian woman. My name is Amaka Chibuzo-Obi, your host on this darling program. And tonight, to discuss upbringing and marital conflict, I want you to join me as I welcome my big brother, Clement. Welcome to Wives Roundtable.
Thank you very much, Amaka. I'm so glad to be here once again.
It's always such an honor and a pleasure having you on the Wives Roundtable show.
Thank you.
So, when I told you I wanted us to discuss upbringing and marital conflict, I would say exactly what you told me. You shouted, "Whoa, that's really deep." And I was like, yes, it's absolutely deep. I know that this is a very deep conversation that we're about to have tonight, because the bulk of issues that people face in marriage could, to a great extent, be traced to their upbringing. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people are not aware about this. So now I want us to start with examples of certain attributes or certain conflicts in the home that could be a result of upbringing. But before we go there, I want you to tell our people what makes you the right person to have this conversation with me tonight. Let us know who you are and why you're very qualified to discuss this with me.
Like you did introduce me. My name is Clement. Okay, I'm a family life practitioner. I deal with family issues. I'm a trained marital counselor, and with specific interest in premarital and postmarital counseling, and then grooming men. I have deep interest in bringing men, and that's because I value relationship and I love men being who they are supposed to be. Because most of the conflicts we have today in the family, if our men play their role as men, we won't have the level or the degree of conflict we have today in our family. So that's why I have vested interest in men. I've done a lot of, I don't want to go into all that because I want us to talk more on the topic rather than...
All right. So now tell us, what sorts of conflict? What sorts of issues in the home? Because I know somebody listening right now is probably saying, how can my upbringing be causing problem for me in my home? But I also know that these things sometimes are unconscious, and that's why I want us to pick out some certain things that you, in your experience as a married counselor, and also in your experience as a married man of over 18 years, what are some of the things that can be traced to upbringing in the home?
Yeah, thank you very much, Amaka. Let me start with this. I want to let us know that all of us, let me not say most of us, all of us are products of our upbringing.
Absolutely.
That's a basic fact. But the truth about it is that a lot of the things that most of us play out are unconscious.
Absolutely.
People play it unconsciously without tracing it back to their origin, where they are coming from. We all come from different backgrounds, different families, different environments. And the truth is that the environment, the background, the families that all of us come from are the actual things that influence our behaviors. For instance, if you come from a family that is highly disjointed, let me put it that way, the tendency is that you are going to behave the same way as they behave in your family. Let me tell you what I mean.
Okay.
If a young man is from a home where father and mother, they were always fighting. The daddy is always beating the mom, is always either slapping or telling, keep quiet, don't talk, you don't have to talk. The tendency is because that is what he sees growing up. And he grows up to believe that that is the same way it's going to be. So that child, the first thing the child will do is that he will not allow the sisters to talk. When the sisters are talking, he will shut them down. Because daddy is always shutting mommy down. Mommy is a woman, daddy is a man. So the men should be in control. The sisters won't talk. That's where it starts. But it is unconscious. That's why I say it's unconscious. Because he doesn't know that that's the same way daddy is behaving. Remember that daddies are supposed to be role model to their children. So they are modeling their dad because the dad is the one that he's seeing. And then children usually pick first of all from the home. So because that's what daddy does, he believes that's how he should behave. So he grows up with that, believing that the woman should not talk. Because daddy never gives mommy the right and opportunity to talk. So he starts with the sisters. From the sisters, he goes out. Then when he eventually marries, he now feels that he is well equipped. So when he marries, because that's the standard that was introduced to him growing up, if he has his own wife, the tendency is that the wife will also not talk. Or if the wife talks, it is a woman, shut up, women don't talk. Or who are you? What do you know that you are talking? And all that. Those are some of the ways those things can play out.
Well, this thing you're just talking about right now, I know a guy who grew up in that kind of family, and I was at a point in my life I lived with them. He was a teenager at the time, and his father was that kind of person who did not allow his wife talk, was that kind of person that wanted his wife to practically lie on the floor, let him step all over her. And the guy kept saying, Auntie Amaka, I would never be like my dad. I would never be like my dad. I absolutely hate what my dad does to my mom. But then now he's grown and he's married, and I see his father in him. I see those traits of his father in him. And one day I called him and I said, Guy, remember you told me that you always hated what your dad did to your mom. Well, I see you doing the same to your wife. And he swore. He said it's a lie. That him, no, God forbid, I can never be like my father. So what I'm trying to say is, how is it that even for some people who absolutely hated those attributes that they saw in the home, how is it that they're still somehow unconsciously living those attributes, even though they didn't want to?
Amaka, one thing you have to understand is that this thing is programming. It's a program that you have written. And it was written unconsciously. You were gradually writing it gradually without knowing that you were writing that program.
Wow.
So once there's a trigger, what happens is that you go back to that program.
To your cabinet.
You go and call it up. And then you act it out unconsciously. Without even knowing. Without recall. So thinking back, this is how my dad used to behave. So until you come to a consciousness where you find yourself now in a level, maybe something has happened, maybe you have to go for counseling or something, they now begin to trace back. At what point did this guy begin to behave like this? They will now trace it back. Okay, let's look at his upbringing. Or if he didn't start it, maybe when he started, maybe he lived with his parents who were good. Then later on, he left the parents, went to stay with an uncle, or went to stay with somebody. They now have to rewrite the program from the original thing. So he had taken in another thing. So until a person comes to that consciousness, where he says, okay, this is how my daddy used to behave, and this is the same program that I have learned. Because the truth is that all of us, mommy, were like apps. Everything we do is like app. We are like telephone. The telephone you have cannot act over and above all the apps that you have
inside.
If you download, if you have Zenda, I don't have Zenda, and I want to send something to you and I'm using Zenda. If I like, let me do it for 20 years. You won't get it because you don't have that app on your phone to accept what I'm giving you. So growing up, all those behaviors are apps.
Have been installed.
You've downloaded them and installed them. So they are just acting out what is in you. So until that person comes to that consciousness, okay, this is how my father used to behave, and I modeled my dad, he will not come out of it. He will continue to live in self-denial.
Absolutely. See, in our work as counselors, we hear so much of these things. And usually when you ask, especially because I work with women a lot, when I ask them to say, okay, where do you think this is coming from? So I'm going to use 2 examples right now. One is a woman whose husband swore that she would never work. And he married her as a working class woman, only for him to bring her home and says, you're going to have to resign. I don't want my wife working for anyone and all of that. And it was such an issue in the home. It brought up so much conflict. The home was splitting apart. And I asked her, I said, where is that coming from? I mean, okay, what reason is he giving you for not wanting you to work? And he says, no, he's saying he wants me to raise the children and all of that. And I said, okay, we need to trace where this is coming from, which is exactly what you said, because this is something that a lot of people don't think of doing. So, I just ran a very quick trace, asking her some very basic questions about the man. And I realized that her husband's mother was the breadwinner in the home and kind of marginalized his father so much. So he grew up watching his father being emasculated and swore that no woman would earn enough in the home to emasculate him like that. So it was coming from somewhere. Now, it wasn't that it was the exact script.
It was coming from the direction of resistance.
Absolutely. So it was like, this is what I saw in my home. So because of that, I am going to prevent that from happening in my home, which is still upbringing. Which is still absolutely upbringing. So let's go for a very quick break. When we come back, let's talk about how we can now begin to manage these things. Because during the introduction, I actually said that whoever you're in a relationship with, whether just basic relationships or marital relationships, you didn't grow up in the same home with that person. So you're coming from a different background. The person is coming from a totally different background. The issue is now when you start saying things like, this is not how you're supposed to act. And the person is saying, no, you're the one that is acting the way that you're not supposed to act, because both of you have different views on life. So when we come back, I want you to help us with how can we begin to manage these things, knowing that we are different, with different upbringings, different experiences, and all of that. Is it even workable? Can we still manage to have a peaceful, blissful relationship in spite of our different upbringings? We'll discuss all of this right after this break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Wives Roundtable show. I hope you guys have been having as much fun listening to Clement discussing upbringing and marital conflict with me. Now we've talked about how all of these things can manifest in marriage. Now let's talk solutions. How can we help our partners? Now we've established that, so some of these misbehaviors I see in this person could be a result of his or her upbringing. Now, next step. What's the next thing I can do to help ensure that this upbringing matter that we're talking about does not creep into my marriage and destroy things for me?
Yes, I think one of the things that we need to do, Amaka, first of all, we have to recognize that there's a problem.
Okay.
And then 2, everybody must be intentional and deliberate.
Very true.
Because you cannot solve a problem where you don't have intention of solving it. And if you want to solve it, you must be deliberate. Deliberate means that you want to take the right and necessary actions. Yes, step to help you. So first of all, recognize that there's a problem in the family or in the marriage. Then 2, the next thing is, what do I do to get this problem solved?
Okay.
3, haven't realized what to do. It is either you go for counseling, which is what I advise that people should naturally do. Go for counseling, go for an assessment. So that in that assessment, they are going to run some tests. They will do personality assessment test. They will do maybe culture and background test and all that. All those things, by the time they finish all those assessments, it will give a very good picture of where the problem is. Because one thing is to realize a problem, and the next thing is to realize how do we solve the problem.
Absolutely.
Do you understand? If, for instance, somebody is sick of malaria, they will tell you whether it's 1 plus, 2 plus, or 3 pluses.
The test will tell you.
The test will tell you. That will also let you know the amount of antidote that you are going to apply to take care of the problem. It's the same thing with marital or background issues. When you go to a counselor and they do all this assessment, they will be able to tell you that, look, this problem started from here. And then what people should now do is that the first thing you have to do is to do what? Uninstall. Because there are apps that you have installed. The same way you uninstall apps on your phone, you delete. When you delete, you now download the right app that you need. So you go for counseling. They will delete that app, that system that you were used to growing up, that you've internalized in you. You have to uninstall it consciously and begin to reinstall again what is going to help you now to solve that particular problem that is on ground. That's when you have realized that, this is how my mother used to shout. And now, that's the same way I'm shouting on my husband. That's the same way I'm shouting on my children. So when you realize that, look, it was from your mother that you got it, you have to consciously, each time you want to exhibit that behavior, you have to consciously, no, I'm not going to behave like my mom. No, I'm not going to behave like my mom. The moment you begin to do that, it will bring that consciousness in you that, look, I am changing. I am changing. Therefore, each time you open your mouth to shout, you just remember, you want to shout like your mommy. You want to shout like your mommy. Something will tell you, no, hold it. By the time you do that consistently for 1 week or 2 weeks, you realize that, I'm actually getting out of this particular thing. But the thing is that you must be ready to change. Because if you are not ready to change,
nothing will change.
Meet the best counselor on earth. You will not be able to get
that's very true. I really love the fact that you mentioned intentionality. Being intentional about it is very, very key. I would use myself as an example. I grew up with a very strict father. So of course we know how we used to grow up back then. Now you talk one, the slap would come from, you wouldn't even see it coming, So when I grew up and I got married, and any little misunderstanding, I'm on fire. Like, all that fire that I received, I was dishing it out like levels, per second like this. And my grace is that I have a husband who is self-aware. So one day, because he met my father before my father passed on, so he kind of had an idea of what kind of background I was coming from. And I remember one day, about 1 year or 2 years in marriage, still newly married, and he told me, because then I wasn't self-aware at all. I had no idea that upbringing can even affect anybody. I'm just like, this is the way I am, and that's it, So, but he just told me that day, and he was like, babe, you have to calm down. All of these things, you are treating me as if I'm your father. So I was reacting to all of the pain and all of the, flogging and beating around, I was reacting to that with somebody. It's just like bleeding on somebody who didn't cut you.
Because you are seeing your father in him.
Absolutely. So I was being harsh, overtly harsh, because I felt like I was now saving myself from, because I couldn't save myself back then, So, and immediately he said that, and I saw that, in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's actually true. True confession. I didn't admit to him at the time that he was correct. But in my mind, I told myself that this makes a lot of sense. I feel like this is where this is coming from. And I knew that being on fire like that was no way to have a peaceful, blissful relationship that I really wanted. So I went back and I asked myself, what can I do to get to the root of where this is coming from? Yes, I know it's because of the kind of discipline, really tough discipline I got as a child. Well, what's the next step? And that's when I started taking some courses. I started talking to people to help me reinterpret or change the interpretation of all of those things. And from then I was now able to release the hold that it had over me. Do you understand? So it kind of helped. Now imagine that my husband was not that kind of self-aware person that couldn't even help me trace. So I'll come with fire, him will come with fire, and the house will just light it up.
I'm so glad when you said your husband realized it. That's another thing that we need to do. If your husband understands where you are coming from, he will help you get over it.
Get over it, yeah.
Or if you understand where your husband is coming from, you also help your husband to get over it. So it's very, very necessary that we go back and know where we are coming from.
And know where the other person is coming from.
Both of you. Because when you, if like you talked about yourself, even my wife, for instance, my own background is different from my wife. My wife is somebody that she's always prepared. Because of where she came from, maybe a polygamous home. You understand?
So everybody is on
of course, polygamous home, every woman is fighting
for themselves.
For their own. So she was the only one among her siblings that stood up and fought the other women. So she had that fighting lion spirit, which is in her. So when you are coming to her, you must be prepared. Because it's that she's fighting to bench you before you even land.
Say anything.
She will bench you, or she will push you in such a way that you won't even continue. But I'm not from that kind of background. I'm from the gentle, calm, that calm type. I'm now coming, somebody is trying to, it took me time. In fact, if not that I went through all these courses, that I now realize, okay, this is why. So I now had to calm down and said, okay, what is the best approach for me? So sometimes when she reacts in a way, I just calm down because I know that's where she's coming from.
Absolutely.
If I react the same way, the family would have broken.
Yes.
This is my 22nd year in marriage. Wow. We have been managing and holding that problem. That's because I've come to realize where she's coming from. Do you understand? So I know how to deal with her in certain issues that have to do with those background and this thing. Otherwise, the family will just unconsciously will scatter our family. Yeah. And then everybody will just go and they will say it's irreparable. Yeah. There is absolutely no family problem that cannot be repaired.
As long as there is willingness.
As long as there is willingness.
Yes.
On
the both
parties. The two of them.
Absolutely.
To adjust and make things work.
Yeah. That's a fantastic note to wrap up the show. I'm going to also pitch this in that the work is not for one person to do. It's not for either the husband or the wife to do. It's for both parties to do. We're from different backgrounds. Own your own limitations, your own weaknesses, and begin to work towards making them better. Don't just say that's how I am. Now that's how my mother raised me. You should start behaving like my mother. You did not marry your mother, so you cannot turn another person's daughter to your mother. You have to come to the realization that this is a marriage, and both of you have to leave some certain things, pick up some other things to make your own nation work. Because marriage really is a nation. We're building a nation in our homes. So you just have to be intentional, be willing, be deliberate, so that we can have the kind of peaceful families that will give our world peace. Because honestly, our world needs as much peace as it can get. We'll be right back with something else right after this short break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We're now on to something else, our Anything Can Happen segment of Wives Roundtable. And in this segment, I'm going to ask Clement, if you were to advise your 18-year-old self right now with everything you've known and experienced and seen in life now, and you had the power to go back and advise your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Okay, Amaka, in reaction to your question, I think I will advise my 18-year-old to be careful about life. Oh. Well, this life, there are too many things in life, so you have to be careful over everything. Don't overdo things,
Okay.
and I don't know if there's any English like undo things.
Yeah. Don't overdo
don't
and
overdo and don't
underdo.
underdo. Just make sure that whatever you are doing in life, you are doing the right things in life.
Yeah.
And where you are confused in life, go to those who are above you, ask them questions so that they can put you through in life. Because at this age, you are still young. And I want you to end up a better man.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
For me, my 18-year-old self, I'll tell her to take it JJ. Take it easy. Because when at 18, you're feeling like, oh, I'm an adult now, this is me, freedom. Especially for those of us who got into school at 18, you're like, yay, freedom, is this you? So you want to eat everything at the same time. So I will tell my 18-year-old self that there is still so much ahead. There is the road is long. Just take things easy. Make valuable friends. Keep valuable friendships, and just take things one step at a time. Don't rush, because once there is life, you still have so much to accomplish. So yeah, my 18-year-old self, I can't do that anymore. So I'm now using this opportunity to tell the 18-year-olds that may be listening to us right now that, the life is not as you see it. Because at that between 18 and 21, a lot of people just feel like this is where everything ends.
Struggling with being adult and
yes,
coming out from adult.
so they just make lots of mistakes. They just get themselves into a lot of vices because they feel like, that's what big boy or big girls is about. But no, that's not it at all. So guys, I hope you had a lot of fun listening to this particular episode of the Wives Roundtable show. Don't forget that we will be here same time, same station next week. So don't forget to make it a date with us. Don't also forget to connect with our community on social media. We are on Facebook as well as Instagram at Wives Roundtable. My name is Amaka Chibuzo-Obi, and you can also connect with me if you're a woman struggling with feelings of inadequacy and all of those feelings like I'm not good enough and any such thing. Connect with me also. Let's see how we can help you be your confident, expressive self. Until I come your way next week, love everyone around you, but most importantly, love yourself, because you can't give what you don't have. Have a very good evening, friends. Bye-bye.